Hey, welcome back to the pod. I've missed talking to you so much again. It has been over 2 weeks since I released my last episode, which was not entirely intentional, but I do have a good reason. I think I mentioned briefly that I was training for a bakery job around late November, early December-ish time. And once I finished my training, I was just meant to be working there on Sundays, and I was due to start a new 16-hour job in the week at a corner store somewhere. But fun story, I lasted 2.5 hours into my first shift there, which I will almost definitely end up talking about properly on here at some point, because my god, did my brain spiral down a gazillion existential questions that day. But it meant that I had to find another job, which thankfully I did within like 2 days. I was really, really lucky with the timing of it and how it all panned out. And I started on January 9th, which I think was when I released my last episode. So I'm now just working at one place because they didn't want me keeping my Sunday job, which was a shame because I really liked it there. But the new job's been great, the team's been great, I'm really enjoying it. But it has just been, or it's felt like another roller coaster of energetic and emotional ups and downs, because once again my routine has been thrown up into the air and I feel like I'm trying to grab all the pieces of it and tether them back down to earth one by one. It's also been a big reminder to me of the importance of meticulous planning through periods of change, because I didn't plan when I was going to fit in writing and filming and cooking and cleaning and working out around my new schedule. And again, I found the 9-hour training days to be knackering. So I had a few too many days of coming home after work and vegging out on the sofa and not getting through any of my to-do list, which has left me quite behind again. But actually I'm feeling quite in the swing of things already, and I'm aiming to get back to weekly releases imminently. Even if I'm not releasing episodes at the same time on the same day each week, I'd quite like to get back to releasing an episode around every 10 days, I think. But that's everything that's changed down my end, and although generally I'm feeling really great at the moment and positive about where my life is and my new work situation and my new routine post-uni, last week was a bit of a different story. I was fully in the throngs of my luteal phase, and the girlies that get it, get it. And I don't know what it was about this one in particular, but it was just kicking my ass. I've always considered myself pretty lucky in that my cycle has never seemed to affect me too severely. I've never really badly struggled with PMS. I don't find that my mood fluctuates that severely throughout my cycle or throughout my period at all. But I will occasionally feel a little bit weepy in the couple of days running up to my period, or specifically on the day before my period. I'm actually terrible. I've never properly tracked my period before now. And it's not always been super regular anyway, so I would frequently have these days where I would be feeling so irrationally low no matter how objectively good of a day I would be having. And I would say to myself, why the hell am I feeling so sad? And then the next day I'd wake up and go, oh, that's why, evidently. But last week I did have a good 4, 5, 6 days of feeling a bit more down and tearful and sad than usual, which was probably just because it was being exacerbated by the tiredness from work. And also I think I've just felt a tiny bit unsettled generally, just because of how different my life is looking in comparison to how I thought it would look post-uni. Not even in a bad way, it is just different, and I feel different, and I'm still trying to work out what I actually want for myself and where I want to focus all my efforts now that they're not going into 4 hours of violin practice a day like they have been for the last 7 years. There have just been a lot of consecutive life changes in what feels like quite a short span of time, to summarise it. But last week was actually super useful in a sense, because I'm a very proactive person, I'm a big problem solver, that is how I respond to the world, and I spent a lot of time thinking, okay, I'm finding things a bit more difficult than usual this week. I'm finding it harder to think positively and harder to get up and work out and harder to know what to do with myself. What am I going to do about it? What do I need to do better? What tried and tested responses do I need to fall back on that I know are going to make me feel better? What can I do or change that is going to make it easier for me to do the things that I know are going to make me feel better? And there are plenty of things that I've incorporated into my life for a long time that I was using, but there were actually also quite a few things that I think I became fully aware of for the first time, or fully aware of the fact that I was using them as means to an end, that I want to start more consciously relying on and utilising in the future. whether I'm in a funk or just having a bummer of a week or whatever the case may be. Because I do think that doing things with intention can really magnify any positive outcomes. So this is going to be an episode about things that I use when I'm in a bit of a funk, or when I'm a bit more down than usual, or when I'm in my luteal phase apparently, to help me get through the week. Before we start, I'm not going to talk about any of the things that we've all heard 1,000 times before, like exercise, go for walks, cook your own meals and socialise, because I want to do a whole episode on why we should do these things and the science behind the positive impacts that they have on us another day. Today isn't about things that are generally good for us, it's about things that I specifically do when I'm not feeling great. Also, I think it's worth mentioning that I am far from depressed currently. I'm someone who is generally mentally very well, but is still human and goes through rough patches. Again, I want to make a separate episode on things that I think helped me get through depression. The first tool I use is an energy menu. I got this idea off of a woman on TikTok named Helena, and she posted a video that I saw in 2023, so I'm really glad that I was actually able to find this one and trace back to where it came from, and I'll leave a link for it in my bio. She talks a lot about mental health and autism and ADHD on there. Quick little side note. As far as I'm aware, I am neurotypical, but I have definitely spent a lot of time questioning whether I'm a little bit further down the spectrum towards neurodivergence than your average Joe. And I remember talking to my CBT therapist about it about 3 years ago, and we discussed it, and she kind of said that she didn't think I was, because I had come to her saying that I thought I might have ADHD, and she said she didn't think I did, but there was nothing to stop me reading up on tools and techniques that neurodivergent people use to help them, or coping mechanisms that they use, and seeing if I could benefit from any of it. And she sent me an article on harnessing ADHD hyperfocus, which I read. I did go back through my emails to try and follow the link that she sent me so that I could reread it again, but the access to the site must have changed since then, because it was asking me to pay a crazy amount of money to read it, so I couldn't do that, unfortunately. But I remember finding it profoundly impactful at the time because of what I learned about dopamine from it. I think it taught me a really valuable lesson at the time, which was that there is so much to be gained from learning in general about anything. Something doesn't need to apply directly and specifically to you for you to benefit from reading about it or listening to somebody else talk about it. A lot of the time I think it can be unexpectedly beneficial to listen to people talk about things that upon hearing you could assume are relevant to you, because you don't identify with a specific label or life struggle, because it can expose you to vastly different perspectives. Like everything that I've learned about higher and lower brain conflict, which I talked about in episode 2, stemmed from me watching a Mel Robbins podcast episode on drinking habits and people's relationship with alcohol. And I don't drink. Like, it's something that on paper was so far from relevant to me, but I learned so much about my own brain from it, and I learned so many tools that this coach uses with people who do struggle with it that I now apply in my own life daily. But anyway, that's a massive digression. All of this is just to say that there are golden nuggets of information to be found in places that you wouldn't normally think to look, and I think I found a golden nugget in Miss Creator's feed. She talked about how she really likes having structure and in advance planning, but because her energy levels fluctuate so massively, she often finds herself feeling unable to do the things that she planned when she gets to them. So instead of planning exactly what she's going to do in a certain time block, she will schedule time for a specific type of activity, like workout time, and then has 3 different activities within that to choose from. One being for when she has high energy, one a medium amount of energy, and one low energy. Then when it comes to her scheduled workout time, she picks the activity that matches her energy level in that given moment. I think there is a misconception that people who create and live by extensive routines are living rigid lifestyles that stifle any opportunity for enjoyment or freedom or spontaneity. But I am very much of the opinion that in the long run, creating strong, healthy habits frees up so much more of your mental bandwidth to be used on other things, like putting more of your energy into the things that you love and enjoy. And they also keep you operating at an optimal state, which helps you maintain your freedom. And I certainly feel much more free and empowered to do what I want with my life now than I did when I was clinically depressed without any structure to my life or healthy routines in place. I also think that brilliant ideas like this allow you flexibility and freedom to make decisions in the current moment based on how you feel, whilst empowering you to continue living by the structures and routines that you know are going to keep you on track to living as your happiest, healthiest self. I did speak a lot about how to push through your feelings and do the things that you know are going to benefit you even when you don't want to in episode 2, and I still stand by everything I said in that, and I think learning how to do what you don't feel like doing in the moment is an integral life skill to build. But I also think if there is a way in which you can show up for yourself in a more gentle way on the days when you are really going through it, then why wouldn't that be a great idea? Obviously it depends what you're doing it for. Like if you're training for a marathon but you are finding that 75% of your days are low energy days, so you're going for a walk instead of a run, then this might not be the right tool for you to use, or you just need to make sure that your chosen low energy day activities are still in alignment with your goals and what you want for yourself. But for me personally, I'm exercising for the physical but especially the mental health benefits, which I will get whether I'm hitting the weights at the gym or doing a 20-minute low impact Pilates workout at home. I just have 2 options for working out in my energy menu because that's what works for me. I'm taking a break from weightlifting at the moment, and my high energy option is either a run or a HIIT workout at home, and then my low energy day option is an at-home Pilates workout. And like Helena said in her video, what's high energy for somebody else may be low energy for you, and vice versa. Your low energy day activity might be a 5-minute stretching routine or walk outside, or my high energy day activity, a 5k run, may be your low energy day activity. The whole point of it is to tailor this to your own needs and abilities and goals. This was super useful to me last week because whilst I have built the skills to push myself to get up and run on the days that I really, really don't feel like it, I think I am also currently learning that there are ways of being disciplined without forcing yourself to do the same thing every single day. And sometimes being a little bit more gentle with myself and choosing to do the Pilates in my pyjamas instead of going out for the 5k is going to be more conducive to my happiness than being able to say that I've done the harder thing for the sake of it. A really important part of doing what you said you were going to do when you said you were going to do it is also making sure that the goals you are setting yourself are sensible and that you're setting them for the right reasons. Like there would be absolutely no point to me getting up at 5 a.m. and going out for a run if it wasn't benefiting me in other ways other than just making me more disciplined. Because what is the point of discipline if there are no other positive outcomes from the activities that you're being disciplined with? There has to be more benefit from that for me. I do it partially for the discipline increase and comfort zone expansion, sure, but I've also spoken about the importance of balancing time spent stretching your comfort zone and snapping back to recuperate and recharge. And I think going forward, the last week of my luteal phase is going to be a rest and recuperate week for me. I think showing up for myself in a softer way was potentially a more responsible way of looking after myself. I think it did positively impact my mood, and it probably stopped me unnecessarily tiring myself out before long work days. You can apply the energy menu tool to any areas of your life that it could be helpful. Like I've compiled a list of recipes categorized into how long they take to cook and how long it takes to clean up after. So whether I'm low on time and or energy, or whether I have plenty of time to spare and I'm in the mood to cook something more complex, I can choose something appropriately. Helena also mentioned applying it to morning routines as well, which I haven't done personally because my morning routine works really well for me however I'm feeling, but I think it's a really good idea to consider. Like she said in her video, you are much more likely to get something done when you have planned in advance what you are going to do when you get to it and don't feel like doing it. Removing the friction between yourself and an activity that you know is going to be good for you can only ever be a positive thing. So if you can do that by making it easier for yourself on low energy days, then that's great. Which leads us right on to number 2, which is removing as much friction as possible between myself and the activities that I know are going to make me feel better, as well as getting especially proactive about my priorities. For example, I know myself and I know what I hate and what I find hardest about getting up in the morning, and it is the cold. Again, I know how to force myself out of bed and into a workout set, but it doesn't stop me being miserable about it, and it doesn't stop me being freezing for the first 5 minutes of my workout, which would otherwise be a really enjoyable activity. One morning last week, I was dreading getting up and changing into my workout set, and I stopped for a minute and was kind of just like, hold on, what is actually stopping me doing my Pilates in my pajamas? I'd probably get going much quicker because, yeah, I can get changed, but I'll probably spend about 10 minutes doing it because I'll be trying to peel the band-aid off as slowly as possible. I thought to myself, I'll have more fun if I'm comfortable and warm, so I did the workout in my pajamas. Yeah, I was sweating like a pig after 2 minutes, but in all honesty, I will take 20 minutes of sweat and slog over 2 minutes of freezing my ass off any day. It got me through the workout quicker and with a bigger smile on my face. Another example is that I know what will put me off getting up off the sofa and going to bed, and what will ultimately lead to me doom scrolling for a couple of hours, and that is when I am low on energy or particularly tired or down, the last thing that I want to do in the evening is get up and wash my face. I don't know what it is about it, it just feels like too much, but what will happen is I'll be lying on the sofa feeling really tired, knowing that if I got up and went to bed I would fall asleep, and that getting an early night and more sleeping will do me good, but I won't want to get up and wash my face. So I will procrastinate, which when I'm feeling really down, unfortunately often looks like doom scrolling. And then I will doom scroll for 2 hours, and at the end of it, I'll be left in the same dilemma with no more energy to get up and wash my face, and I'll have lost 2 hours of sleep. I did it when I came home from a day at work on my first week, and it just made me feel like crap. And I got to the end of the first hours and I thought, fuck it, sure, I might wake up with a couple of spots tomorrow, but it is much more important that I get these 2 hours of much needed sleep than it is that I wake up with a perfect complexion tomorrow. This is what I mean by priorities. So for the last couple of weeks, if I've been lying on the sofa and feeling my eyes closing, I will just get up and go to bed, because it is much more important to me that I get my much needed rest through this transitional period than it is that I maintain an Instagrammable standard skincare routine. My skin's appearance doesn't have to impact my happiness if I don't let it, and clogged pores aren't going to do me any long-term health damage, but extensive hours of sleep lost to doom scrolling on the sofa because I don't want to get up and get my makeup off might. I feel like a lot of this sounds so obvious, but we still don't use it. Like, it is ultimately about being proactive, and if you are waking up in the morning and struggling to get on with a workout, it's just about asking yourself, what is stopping me? Right, you're being slow because you don't like being cold and you don't want to change into your sports bra. Do it in your pyjama shirt then. If it's not going to hurt you, it is only going to help you. Sleep in your makeup and do the Pilates workout in your pyjamas if that's what will get the workout done and get you a good night's sleep. Then after taking care of yourself for a rough week, you're probably going to be in a much better place to go into the next week as the best version of yourself, who won't bat an eyelid at having to wash their face at the end of the night, or whatever it is that you find difficult personally. Different days and different weeks are going to require you to show up for yourself in different ways. Number 3 is putting positive podcasts on first thing in the morning. I find that I'm often the least immediately self-aware first thing in the morning. Like, it will take my brain a while to fully fire up. So sometimes I can wake up feeling a bit anxious or low, or feeling a sense of unease, and I won't quite be able to explain to myself why. So I then find it harder to problem solve and get out of that mood. And this will happen to me much more frequently when I'm having a tricky week. This is something that I really want to start talking about more often and linking more regularly to what I'm saying, because I think it's relevant to so many things. But your thoughts, feelings and actions all influence and have a knock-on effect to each other. Your anxious or low mood will impact the thoughts that you have, which will feed back into your low mood, and so on, which can help explain why funks can escalate so quickly and feel so hard to get out of and go on for an unnecessarily long period of time. When I am less switched on, when I wake up first thing in the morning in the middle of a small rough patch, I find it much more difficult to redirect my negative thinking in a more positive direction. I also find that often the first 15 to 30 minutes of my morning can set the tone for the next few hours or even the rest of the day. And if I feel really crap for that crucial interval, it can linger and fester, again, unnecessarily. So on tricky weeks when I'm more prone to waking up in a low mood, I will put a podcast on, a positive one, through my headphones pretty much the minute I wake up. I don't tend to use music because I find that my thoughts will wander more easily when I'm listening to music as opposed to listening to somebody else speak. For me, listening to somebody else's positive inner dialogue when I'm in that extra impressionable state first thing in the morning influences me really, really easily and puts me in a more positive headspace. I tend to put on my comfort podcasters, which are Trinity Tondelier and Kaylee Stewart, who are the hosts of the Wellness Cafe and the Hot Girl Energy podcast, respectfully. Their podcasts aren't too serious, they're both very fun, and it's like listening to your bubbly chatterbox friends tell you about their week over the phone, mixed in with a bit of motivational and positive self-development related content. Very light-hearted stuff that I don't have to concentrate too much on listening and that I can just let wash over me and positively influence me whilst I'm doing my Pilates in pyjamas. That for me does the trick in terms of influencing my thoughts positively, which then has a knock-on positive impact on my mood, which then feeds back into my thoughts and makes it much easier for me to consciously steer my own thoughts in a more positive direction once I take the headphones out. If you are really struggling on any given day to think positively for yourself, I highly recommend letting somebody else sit in the driver's seat and do the thinking for you just for a little bit. Put on somebody uplifting or funny that you enjoy listening to. I know my boyfriend Ed loves Off Menu and Finn versus the Internet. I personally prefer something that does have some self-development or mindset related content mixed in, just to remind myself and prove to me that there are people out there fearlessly living with a glass half full attitude, and that I too can choose to believe that everything is going to work out in my favour if I want to. Just allow yourself to be positively influenced. Number 4 is doing something that pushes you out of your comfort zone. When I'm low, I tend to find that my self-confidence dips as a result of negative thinking and being more prone to self-doubt and what-if questioning and rumination. So I like to do something that expands my comfort zone to combat that, because that for me is the biggest confidence booster. I prove to myself that I create and shape my own reality and what is possible for me, and that I can do difficult and scary things. When you're having a particularly hard time, I think it's a great idea to tie this into something that you're potentially at least going to partially enjoy. So what I did last weekend was I took myself on a solo date. Confidence is such a weird and funny thing. I was talking to another woman about it at work last week because we were talking about travelling, and she was telling me about how much solo travelling she'd done and how she'd gone to Switzerland and Canada and Mexico, literally all by herself, no problem. But if somebody at Starbucks gives her a wrong drink, then she feels too nervous to go up and tell them, which to me is absolutely hilarious. I found it wild because the thought of travelling to a non-English speaking country by myself scares me absolute shitless, but anything relating to people or any potential conflict, like, I'm absolutely fine with. Sure, I get nervous sometimes, and if I do end up in confrontation with people, I'll occasionally get an adrenaline spike, but that's normal. I'd say that I felt pretty much entirely confident in job interviews, in speaking to people on the phone, in telling people at a cafe that they've gotten my order wrong. I feel absolutely fine talking about my life on the internet and creating social media content, but for some reason, doing things that I haven't done on my own before by myself trips me the fuck up. When I get low, I do tend to ruminate a lot, and it gets really unproductive and unhelpful. I met someone new at work last week, and she's a little bit older and has kids, and she was asking me about my life plan, and I said, oh, I'm not quite sure what I want to do yet career-wise, and I'm just working to pay the bills for a bit and spend the rest of my time on my passion project. I've got the podcast. And she was so lovely to talk to, but she did say, you absolutely have to travel. You have to go now. If you don't go now, you'll always tell yourself that you'll do it one day, and you'll just keep putting it off and off and off, and then you'll have kids, your life will be over and you'll never do it. And I know that has just been her life experience, and that everyone is on their own timeline, and that I can make big life choices and changes at any age, and that there's no rush. And I don't even know whether I want kids yet, but if I do, there's nothing to stop me taking them travelling. I know all that rationally. But I find that it is so much harder to hold on to rational thought sometimes when my mood is bringing my thoughts down to its level. So it bothered me more than it should have, which I was aware of. And I was talking to Ed about it, because I was working myself up and getting scared and worrying about, well, what if I end up washing coffee cups for the rest of my life? And what if I never get to see the world? And what if Ed never wants to travel, so I just stay in Cardiff forever because that's where his work is? All of which is ridiculous and not going to happen unless I let it, which I won't. And as we were talking through it, I put my problem solving hat on and I thought, okay, I would like to get to a point where if Ed didn't ever want to go travelling, I would feel comfortable and confident going on my own, which at the moment I don't. Not necessarily ready, because I think you rarely do feel ready to make for big moves, but at least somewhat empowered. And to get to that point, I'm going to have to start making small steps up the confidence ladder, right? And I thought to myself, what am I not confident doing by myself right now? And I immediately thought solo dating. I read about it everywhere. I hear people talking about it on YouTube and podcasts all the time. And yet I've still not ever done anything more than go and grab coffee by myself. The first thing I thought of was taking myself out to dinner, but then I thought, no, do you know what? We can go even smaller than that to start with. Like, let's make sure it's something that is achievable and that I'm actually going to make happen. So I decided to take myself to the cinema. The only scary bit is walking in by myself, trying to find the snack counter and holding popcorn and a drink and a ticket and ID in two hands without spilling anything. Once I'm in, it will be dark and I can just sit and enjoy a film without anybody looking at me or talking to me. I was so nervous Sunday morning and I really didn't feel like going. I just wanted to stay in my flat where I feel comfortable. But I just thought to myself, I'm going to feel low today no matter what I do. Sunday was the day before my period. It was my worst day mood-wise. I might have felt more comfortable staying at home, sure, but I think I still would have felt low. I felt much more anxious and uncomfortable going out by myself, but I thought to myself, if I'm going to feel like crap, I may as well feel like crap productively. And by the end of it, or by the time I'm sat in the cinema, I might not feel so bad and I might actually enjoy it, which I definitely did. So instead of just feeling bleh all day at home, I had a morning of feeling a bit sick and then an afternoon of enjoying myself and feeling really good and proud of myself after. And yeah, it didn't go completely perfectly and I got embarrassed over stupid things. Like, I was trying to open a paper straw for my Coke, but when I was peeling it, like only a centimetre of paper was coming off each time. So I was stood at this snack counter bar thing for literally a whole minute, probably two, just peeling this paper off centimetre by centimetre. And it was just me and the guy manning it there, so he was just stood there watching me be incompetent and litter his bar with paper. But having gotten through a somewhat, not even actually embarrassing moment and realised that nothing bad actually happened after it, I think I will feel so much more confident in a couple of weeks taking myself out to dinner. Like, the idea of it doesn't scare me anymore. Often doing something that's going to make you feel a bit shit to start with will actually make you feel so much better than you did before afterwards. So if you're having a bit of a shit time of it, I would highly recommend doing something that will make you feel much better in the long run to give you that self-esteem boost when you probably need it most. The last thing is for anybody who finds themselves getting stuck in extreme emotional states, like stuck in extreme anger, or who, like me, can get very hysterically tearful and feel like they literally just don't know what to do or how to get themselves out of it. I have found that having a go-to activity for when I am feeling myself getting into these extreme states to be so useful. When we're in a very heightened negative emotional state, our prefrontal cortex can become less active, which is the part of our brain that is in charge of rational and logical thinking and decision making. So our cognitive function becomes reduced and it can be really hard to get yourself to make any decisions or take any action. I have to credit Ed with this because it's been his doing completely. Last month when I had that awful first day at my new job, I came out in floods of tears. I was very distressed and confused. Ed drove to pick me up and we talked about it for a while on my way home and when we got home, but nothing seemed to be helping me calm down and I felt very stuck. I literally didn't know what to do with myself. And after a while, Ed kind of wordlessly made a decision for me and stuck the Nintendo Switch controllers in my hand and put Stumble Guys on, which is just a free downloadable game that you can get on the Switch. It is very repetitive and within 5 or 10 minutes of playing, I'd gone from being completely hysterical to having stopped crying completely and being well on my way to calming down. There have been a couple of times since then where I've gotten in a similar state, one of them being last week, just because I was so hormonal. I think I was feeling so low and a bit panicked about the fact that I was feeling so low. There was nothing objectively wrong, like nothing objectively bad had happened. Everything was kind of seemingly fine, and then I just got one text from a friend, which ordinarily wouldn't have been remotely problematic, but it sent me into floods of tears and negative thought spirals. And again, I was saying I don't know what to do, I couldn't make any decisions. And again, Ed loaded up some guys, we sat and played that for a bit, and after 5 or 10 minutes I'd calmed down enough to start making some sensible decisions for myself, and I ended up just getting up and going to bed. It's not a completely new idea to me, because somebody that I know who has struggled with depressive episodes for longer than I've been alive makes themselves a lot of lists, and I mean lists of books, lists of TV shows, lists of recipes, and they use it to decide what they're going to do each day in advance. So if they ever are going through a depressive period where they don't feel like or are unable to make decisions for themselves on what they're going to do, they have made that decision for themselves in advance. And I think for most people, usually doing something will make us feel better than doing literally nothing and stewing in our own misery. I do the same thing because it really helps my mood and mental well-being. And if anybody's heard Dr. Chatterjee talk about it or read any of his books, he has spoken about how having so much choice available to us can actually be detrimental to our happiness and well-being. And if we could artificially narrow down the options we have available to us, we could potentially become much happier people. But I think I'll talk about that much more in another episode. It sounds really simple, but I think it's such an underrated tool to have at your disposal. Because if you're in such a state that you cannot make any decisions on interventional action and you're only going to spiral lower in mood and thought patterns, making those decisions for yourself in advance or having your boyfriend make them for you could be your only way of interrupting and reversing that spiral. I don't know exactly what it is about that game that calms me down so quickly. I could probably find out if I did a little bit of research on it, but also, hey, it works, I'm not going to question it. Now that it's happened a few times and been successful every time, I know that it's going to be a decision that I make consciously for myself moving forwards. I have a similar thing when I get so angry that I feel like I just can't come down, which is quite rare for me, but I have been through some very difficult life experiences, and on occasion I will get extremely triggered by something and go into fight mode. Now, as soon as I recognise that it's happening, I immediately take myself out on a 10 or 15 or 20 minute walk, however long I feel like I need, and I will always have calmed down at least slightly by the time I get back, and I will be more in control and more able to make sensible decisions for myself again. It's been an invaluable tool for me, and I think the knowledge that I now have about the stupid Nintendo game probably will be as well in the future. So if you want to, maybe have a think about what unpleasant heightened emotional states you're prone to. I don't know, maybe you never find yourself getting that angry or tearful, but you can experience extreme states of anxiety that you find it very hard to calm yourself down from. And think about what does help you calm down. And then maybe write it down somewhere, as in, when I notice myself entering X emotional state, I will turn to Y activity as soon as possible. I think it's always a good idea with these things to have them down on paper for the sake of helping us remember them, especially when we're talking about scenarios where we know our cognitive ability is going to be reduced. The last thing that I will say isn't so much a tip as it is a reminder for myself and anybody else who has been through really dark periods before or seriously struggled with their mental health. I can and frequently get very scared when I go through a low patch that I'm going to end up regressing back to the place that I was in when I had my complete mental breakdown. I think a lot of the suffering that we experience isn't a direct result of the events that happen to us. It's a result of the narrative that we project onto our reality. In other words, it's caused by what we think about what's happening to us. I catch myself sometimes going down thought paths along the lines of, what if this keeps getting worse? And what if the tools that I use to keep me mentally well stop working? And what if I stop doing the things that keep me mentally sound? And what if I get depressed again? And what if I have to go through psychosis again? And what if I end up hurting myself? And it can feel like these thoughts get very out of control very quickly. And I genuinely do fear going back to that place because it was so horrific. I have to remind myself quite frequently that it is very normal to have not so great days and or weeks, and that even the happiest, most mentally sane people on the planet go through rough patches, and it is part of being human and the human experience to have fluctuating emotions. I can still be a mentally sound and happy person who is just not having their favourite week. It is also so normal to feel low right before your period, because the drop in progesterone and estrogen levels can also lead to a drop in serotonin levels. Experiencing fluctuating emotions and moods is so normal, and it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you or anything that needs fixing. It just means that you're human. You are okay. And that's where we're finishing today. If you have gotten to this point, thank you so much, because I think when I edit this is going to end up being quite a long one. Like always, I hope something I said was able to help somebody. And if you got anything out of today's episode, please consider following or subscribing, or leaving me a thumbs up or star rating or comment. It would really help me out. Look after yourself this week. I love you so much, and I will chat to you again really soon.